how to justify the history of the universe, even if we are the only one habitable planet in the universe, even if we had on this planet only one concentration camp, there will be a big problem with justifying the history of the universe which produced such a monstrum. And in this talk, I want to face this hopeless question. The question, of course, must go beyond the standard cosmology, but I shall try to build up on some cosmological data and theories. So let's start from the very beginning. What was in the beginning? I mean the very beginning of everything, not necessarily a temporal beginning. If there is no time, one can hardly speak of a beginning. One should not ask what was before anything, but rather what was above anything, or at the bottom of everything. Above or at the bottom, in an ontological sense, what was a priori or ontologically prior with respect to anything that was or could be. And in this sense, and I ask such a strong question, ontological question about the beginning, I must say that in the beginning there was a field of possibilities. For the history of the universe to happen, the field of possibilities had to be strongly constrained from all possibilities to what had a chance to happen. The vast field of possibilities must be constrained. And the constraining of possibilities means information. If you have a set of letters just chaotically distributed on a table, it conveys hardly any information. But if you narrow this set to a smaller subset, more ordered subset, it can inform you, for instance, that today we have a nice weather. Some letters are composed into the chain of words which are meaningful. If the constraining of possibilities is an information, this means that some information was encoded in the beginning. And this information is called initial conditions. In this sense, some huge information had to be, so to speak, infused into the universe in the form of its initial conditions. I underline, emphasize that we should not think necessarily in the terms of temporal beginning. It's much stronger beginning I have in mind, the ontological one. But in this way, the history of the universe took off. At the instant in which this constraint imposed on the information in the beginning were released, then the second law of thermodynamics took off and history of the universe started to happen. The increase of entropy means the arrow of time. And this is how we reconstruct the history of the universe from the Big Bang till the present cosmic era. But as I said a moment ago, the beginning had to be very constrained, very, one could say, improbable. This is the picture taken from one of the books of Roger Penrose, and it illustrates, with the help of a metaphor, how improbable are the initial conditions of our universe. To pick up at random the initial conditions of our universe is, according to Roger Penrose, as improbable as this number tells us. When the entropy increases, energy is dissipated, but nevertheless, we see in our environment something like that. Nice picture drawing from Van Gogh is showing us. How to reconcile the increase of entropy with something that is so improbable as we see on this picture. Here we have some various different physical systems. Let's look at these houses. These are some complex system, but the complexity is rather simple. It is enough to have some, I am simplifying, linear equations to have such a structure. The equation is linear if it's two solutions. Sum of these two solutions makes another solution. So to speak, the linear construction is which can be constructed out of the bricks with nothing essentially new. But if you look at these systems here, this tree or this elderly man, they are much more complex, and they are impossible in the linear universe. The universe must be, the system must be non-linear in order to create such a complex systems. Non-linear system must be far away from equilibrium and must be open, because if it's closed, it cannot exchange the energy with the environment, and it will be dead. So the dynamical systems far away from the equilibrium can exist and do not contradict the second law of thermodynamics. And this is quite a recent achievement of physics in the second half of the 20th century. And today we see that there is no contradiction if the locally dynamical systems can work to create complex systems like living organisms. And now, to sum up, increase of entropy means that at the beginning we had a small entropy, and the entropy started to grow, and this determined the arrow of time. And the history of the universe tends towards the increase of disorder, and in spite of that, the origin of structures in states far away of the equilibrium is possible. But nevertheless, the law of second law of thermodynamics is still at work, and this is the ultimate fate of all complex structures, the disintegration of structures, and we can call the disintegration of physical structure physical law, physical evil. For instance, this is an example of physical evil, and it is a product of the second law of thermodynamics. So we can say that the second law of thermodynamics is responsible for the existence of physical law, evil, for physical evil. But moral evil appeared in the history of the universe together with the possibility of free choice. Only intelligent beings which are endowed with the possibility of free choice can be author of a moral evil. Moral evil supervenes on the physical evil. For instance, if somebody kills another human being, it is certainly a physical evil. We have a cadaver, we have a destruction, and so on. But moral evil is something more, something which goes beyond physical laws. It adds something more to the physical evil. The moral evil transcends explanatory power of physical laws. When I came across this book, the idea of which I am now presenting came to my mind. So this is the inspiration of this talk. The book is entitled The Mystery of Existence. Why is here anything at all? This is, of course, a variation of the famous Leibniz question. And the editors of these books are John Leslie and Robert Kuhn. And this is an anthology of different texts starting from Greeks to the present times of classical and less classical texts dealing with the Leibniz question. Why is there something rather than nothing? And of course, the authors who are presented in that book, also they give various answers to that questions and various points of view. So let's ask this Leibniz question. Why is there something rather than nothing? When we are dealing with the problem of good and evil, we must go as deep as possible. And I think this is one of the deepest, or perhaps the deepest questions of all. Is there something rather, why is there something rather than nothing? This is a great mystery of existence. But it has two components. This question has two components. The mystery of existence, but also the mystery of comprehensibility. If something is incomprehensible, but in a very strong sense, not only in the sense that we are unable to comprehend it, but in some ontological sense, something which cannot be comprehended, something which is torn apart by internal contradictions. Something like that cannot exist. So it excludes from existence. Therefore, I think that these two mysteries, the mystery of existence and the mystery of comprehensibility, are but two faces of the same question. Why is there something rather than nothing? Contains two sub-questions. Why the sub-question concerning the existence and the sub-question concerning the comprehensibility. Why is something comprehensible rather than incomprehensible? There are many attempts to answer Leibniz's question. The simplest one tries to answer Leibniz's question with the help of physical laws. For instance, in 1983, these two gentlemen, Steve Hawking and Jim Hartle, published a very often quoted paper dealing with the quantum creation of the universe. And they produced a model which tried to explain the emergence of the universe out of nothingness. Now this model is superseded by many other models of this kind, but I think it was an important paper because it showed the power of physical method, that with the help of physical method, we can at least face such a question like, why is there something rather than nothing? So if we try to answer Leibniz's question with the help of physical laws, in fact, we are looking for, to use a metaphor, a Greek metaphor, an Atlas who supported on his shoulders the universe. We are looking for an Atlas which would support the universe and everything that exists. But it was Plato who gave a very cunning answer to this proposal. Plato asked the question, who is supporting Atlas in such a case? Where the laws of physics comes from? We have discussed that problem this morning. The people who try to explain the existence of the universe with the help of natural laws, they rather expect to discover another Atlas who is stronger and more everlasting than this earthly Atlas. This is a Plato quotation. Another answer to the Leibniz's questions is this one. There is only one logically possible set of physical laws. Everything in the set of laws is connected with everything, and if we change even the smallest thing in this edifice, everything would collapse. This answer to Leibniz's question was fashionable, well, some times ago in the 60s, 70s. People were looking for only logically, uniquely possible set of physical laws. Sometimes this doctrine was called, even earlier, the bootstrap doctrine. Nowadays, we perhaps prefer just opposite explanation, that vice versa, everything is possible, like, for instance, Tegmark, which we have discussed in one of the previous lectures. So the idea of the multiverse. But this does not answer Leibniz's question. In the context of multiverse, Leibniz's question is, I think, even more pressing, because there is much more things that exist and which the existence of which claims for explanation. So let's come back to the original Leibniz's question. Why is there something rather than nothing? Even if the multiverse does not exist, but even if only a tiny pebble existed, then the Leibniz's question would be very pressing. Because even a tiny pebble is infinitely more than nothing. And the question, why is it exist, why is this pebble existing, is claiming for an answer. Well, why is there something rather than nothing? So, but this something may be very different from the pebble or multiverse. For instance, let's look at 2 plus 2 is 4. It is something, it is certainly something. Is it existing? It is existing in some sense. Why is there existing rather than not existing? Like infinitely many other mathematical affairs, the fact that 2 and 2 makes 4 could surely be called something real, but must it therefore exist? This is a quotation from the book I alluded to before. This is the ontology of questions, of papers concerning Leibniz's question. Therefore, what to do with the Leibniz question? There are some people who want to neutralize that question. For instance, by claiming that it is a meaningless question, that it is constructed against the semantic or syntactical rules of the philosophical language, and therefore it has no meaning. Some other people claim that the existence is a brute fact which does not claim for explanation. My comment to the first of this explanation is that no manipulation with language can resolve the real question. It can resolve our speaking about this question. These are attempts, in my view, to anesthetize Leibniz's question rather to answer it. But in this book, edited by Leslie and Kuhn, there is one more attempt to answer Leibniz's question. When I was reading this book, it struck me greatly. In fact, I knew about that before, but somehow only this book ignited in me the process of thinking about that. And the answer to the Leibniz's question is, again, in Plato. For instance, in the Republic, Plato writes, "The good, which is not existence, but lies far beyond it in dignity and power, is what bestows existence on all known things." I think it's a wonderful sentence. The good is not existence. If it is not existent, is it real? And Plato says it's more than real, because it gives existence to all known things. In Phaedo, the good and right is what holds and binds things together. One of the editors of this book, John Leslie, strongly supports this ethical explanation of the existence of the universe. In fact, this explanation was explored in the Middle Ages, and it matured in the writings of St. Thomas Aquinas, whose very famous saying is very well known, that bonum and ens convertuntur, which means good and evil converge. They are the same. So the problem is, what is prior, existence or ontology, or good or ethics? And Thomas says that they converge, that it is the same. The good is a source of existence, and the existence causes the good to exist. Let's notice that Plato was more abstract than Thomas. Plato said that bonum, good, is above existence. And it seems that Thomas has less courage to say something like that, and he only put a sign of equality between existence and good, ontology and ethics. And this started to be the fundamental, the standard thesis of Thomistic philosophy. Usually when we think about the initial conditions, we imagine God or a demiurge who contemplates all possibilities, like on this picture of Penrose I showed in the beginning, classifies all those possibilities and selects one to be implemented. And of course it is a very good metaphor, especially when for didactic purposes, or if we want to present some abstract idea in the picturesque form. But in fact, in this context we are now speaking about, this metaphor is completely misguided. So we should discard it. In this context, we should think like that. The good itself, if one may say so, is the best of possibilities. There is nobody to choose among various possibilities. The good itself is the best of possibilities, and this is why it does exist, and is the source of everything that exists. This is also the Leibniz's answer to his own question. And Leibniz tried to approximate this idea by means of another metaphor. And he pictures of all possible things as struggling for existence. The better they are, the stronger their tendencies to exist. So they are competing with each other, and this thing is winning, which has stronger tendency to exist. In another place, he says, which has more existence. The best possible combination of them is then generated, somewhat as the greatest possible descent of weight is produced when heavy bodies linked by pulleys compete to move downwards. So it is a sort of a solution of the optimal problem or extremal problem. This is the Leibniz's attempt to explain his own idea. We have a difficulty in accepting all this because one of the sources of our resistance to that explanation is how to reconcile the necessity of good with the freedom of doing wrong. And I think we can look for a help in art. In a piece of art, freedom coexists with necessity. Without freedom, only reproductions are possible, no masterpieces. In creating masterpieces, the hand of a master is guided by a subtle necessity. We see that to change any small detail in this composition could ruin the entire structure, the entire picture. Michelangelo envisaged the statue as already existing within the marble, needing only to be set free from it. So the piece of art exists already in the stone, but only unnecessary layers of the stone should be rejected by a master. So it's a sort of coexistence of necessity and freedom. This is a beauty. And this, by contrast, this can be regarded as a picture of evil. And we are coming to a fundamental question, why evil? At least in this context. And again, the only reasonable answer I know is the answer given by Leibniz. So Plato and Leibniz are heroes of talks this morning. This is answer by Leibniz. Possible goods could not all be present at the same time. One ethical requirement could often clash with another. There are not individual goods that concur with each other, but rather the possible combinations. This doctrine of Leibniz was often ridiculed by repeating Voltaire's question, if this is the best of all possible worlds, what are the others? This question was asked by Voltaire in his book Candide in 1755. There was a great earthquake which completely destroyed Lisbon, and the hero of that book, Candide, is walking through the ruins of Lisbon, and he's asking this question: if this is the best of all possible worlds, what are the others? It seems that Voltaire did not understood the depth of Leibniz's idea. And this idea can be put in a nutshell in the following way. The universe without evil and without freedom must be compared with the universe with evil and with freedom. And in Leibniz's view, this is simply better than that. And this is why we exist in the best of all possible universes. Have we justified the existence of evil following Leibniz? Let's come back to this picture again. Why is there something rather than nothing? And there are two sub-questions of that question: the mystery of existence and the mystery of comprehensibility. And it is good which is answer to all these questions and sub-questions. And if so, the good, existence, and rationality are the same, are only different phases of the same thing. If so, the evil is a negation of good. Well, it's not if so, but it's sort of definition of evil. Evil is the negation of good. Therefore, evil is a negation of rationality, because good and rationality converge. And if evil is negation of rationality, it's irrational. And if it is irrational, it cannot be justified. The philosophical part of my talk is finished, and now a few practical things, just one practical thing. The problem of good and evil is, first of all, a personal problem. It is to be solved by good life rather than by constructing good theories. But I think that I tried to convince you. Well, I have no answer to the why evil exists. I have no answer to the Leibniz's question, but I think I tried to convince you that ethics, the problem of good and evil, has also a cosmic dimensions. So it also has a cosmic dimension. Thank you.
Now we have time for questions. Okay. So, yes, Ian?
I think that Plato was over-optimistic about human nature when he said that the good bestows existence. Because in history we have a lot of examples where exceptionally good people, because of their goodness, died.
This is a question or a statement?
Yes. Well, it is a question and a statement.
Yeah, I think okay.
No. Okay. Yes. Mateusz.
Thank you. I have a question according to the problem of the collapse of a wave function. So if we have a typical two-level system, and there is a 50-50 probability that it will collapse to either spin up or spin down, and this is unpredictable. So if this is really random, how can we think about it mathematically? Because when I think mathematically, I think about the protocol, so some algorithm that is executing one by one. And when I have a collapse, I don't have any protocol anymore. Maybe you can comment it somehow.
Well, I cannot understand your question. To me, it's nothing to do with what I have said so far. Well,
Nothing to what?
well, please repeat your question.
I mean, when we have a collapse of the wave function, and then the collapse of the wave function is unpredictable, and then how it can be think about it mathematically? I mean, when I have a mathematical algorithm, I can predict how the algorithm is executing, and
So your difficulty is how the collapse function of the wave function may be mathematical.
yeah, because
I think you are alluding to my view that everything that exists is mathematical, and your counter argument would be that there are some unpredictable things. My answer is that everything we know about wave function, unpredictability, random events, all this based on our mathematical theories. So it is, in fact, mathematical.
okay, thank you.
And and it's not excluded, like for instance, Roger Penrose claims that behind the collapse of wave functions also we have some very sophisticated mathematical models.
Okay, thank you.
More questions? Okay, so let's thank Michael again.